Broadband customers. Subject to availability, terms apply.
It's 9 o'clock across the UK.
Everybody's going to have to sort of swallow their pride and put the interests of the British people who want these debates to take place first. This teary-eyed compassion that the Conservatives suddenly discovered for the Green Party, it's one of the more specious excuses. But the last time I looked, Plaid Cymru has as many MPs as the Greens and UKIP combined. The SNP have twice as many.
The most talked about radio show is here. Call Clegg. Get straight through now. 0345 60 60 973. Leading Britain's conversation. This is Call Clegg with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Only on LBC.
Time for Call Clegg with me, Nick Clegg, here on LBC. And I'm here, as ever, for the next half an hour, taking your questions. So do call on 0345 60 60 973 or email at nickclegg@lbc.co.uk. And of course, you can watch as ever on the website lbc.co.uk. So let's go to the first caller, Peter. Peter in West Hampstead. Hello, Peter.
Yes, hello, Nick.
Hello.
It's about the Chilcot inquiry, which is the most brazen, the most disgraceful and most scandalous cover-up I've ever come across in all my life. What can we, the public, do to help you campaign to get this report released in 28 days? You might say...
I wish I could tell you, Peter. I'm like my wit's end. I mean, the vote to go into that enter into that fateful war was taken in March 2003, and of course I vividly remember the way that all the Labour and Conservative MPs who voted for it, including, by the way, David Cameron, vociferously condemned the Liberal Democrats for standing out against it. And it's 12 years later, we still don't have an explanation for how those decisions were arrived at, who took the decisions, on what basis, and so on. I wish I could tell you how we could get this published in 28 days. It's clearly not going to happen because Sir John Chilcot said it's not going to happen. I don't know. This is the point. None of us really know why those delays would come about. There's endless speculation left, right and centre. But kind of, at the end of the day, as your kind of question implies, it's not really our job to constantly worry about, who said what to whom in an independent process, over which we've got no control. I just feel so incredibly sorry for the families who've lost loved ones and are asking, why did my son or daughter lose their life, and what were the reasons that their political masters took to send them into harm's way? I just forget the politics for a minute. What about them? They deserve more quick answers. And look, there's apparently now, final point on this, Peter, there's apparently now this process going on, which is in the jargon called Maxwellisation. So he or the Chilcot panel, they write, and this is totally legitimate and understandable, write to those who are going to be subject to criticism and allow those people a right of reply. I don't think anyone would begrudge them that right, and that clearly must happen. But once that's done, and I hope that's done as quickly as possible, if there's any question that, that the panel doesn't have the necessary resources then to move very rapidly to actually publishing the final report, I certainly want to see, government provide any resources that would be necessary in order to then get the job done in the quickest way possible so that there are no further excuses for delay left.
Peter, response from you?
Well, I think that if the government tells Chilcot that this is a damn disgrace, then Chilcot would publish it tomorrow. I think it's...
Yeah, well, you say that, Peter, but I mean, I don't think I could have been clearer about my own dismay and actually anger but certainly on behalf of the families that this delay is just going on and on and on. It's just interminable. But look, it's an independent panel, of course, which is what you'd want, Peter, wouldn't you? You wouldn't want it run by politicians. So, at the end of the day, they got to get a move. I'm just totally nonplussed, to put it mildly, that they've got themselves into this situation where 12 years after that vote, we still don't really know, and we haven't had the lid lifted on how those decisions. And the interesting thing, of course, is people like Tony Blair. He is saying, look, that from his point of view, he wants it out as quickly. And I can kind of, we might come at this argument from opposite sides as far as the decision to go to war. But oddly enough, it's in the interests of those who are going to be criticised, apparently, that this report should be published as quickly as possible.
He says he's not a drag on publication. Do you believe him?
Yeah, Yeah, listen, I've got no reason to disbelieve. I sort of take what most people say most of the time on good faith. And look, he clearly believes, and he said this when he said after all these years in politics, he said when he gave evidence to the inquiry that he believed the decision he took was right, etc., etc., etc. I totally disagree with that, but I believe I believe what he says, that he wants it out there so that he can sort of restate his case.
What about this idea in Prime Minister's questions yesterday, Deputy Prime Minister, from, I think, a Conservative MP, that Sir John should appear before a panel of MPs or appear somewhere, so sort of explain and answer a few questions, not necessarily confrontational, but just I have to tell you, the calls we've taken, you agree with that?
Of course I do. Of course I do. Well, look, as a general principle, I think when people, however distinguished or whoever they are asked by a select committee of the House of Commons to come and give evidence on something which is of enormous public interest, they should do so. And look, I have to accept through gritted teeth that this report, which we've been waiting for for years, and do you remember when Gordon Brown announced this? I'm not sure if people remember this. When he announced it in 2009... He
said it'd take 12 months.
He said it'd be published before the last election. It's not going to be published the next one. So, I'm just sort of reconciled to the idea that it's not going to be published at any time soon, certainly not before the next general election. But it seems to me that Sir John Chilcot, having kind of dropped this bombshell on everybody, does at least need to provide a bit, of a fuller explanation. As I said in my letter to him, if you don't provide an explanation, of course, people are going to start assuming the worst. They're going to start assuming that the reporter's going to put its punches, or it's going to be, as I put it, sex down. That's what happens. If you leave a vacuum, a vacuum gets filled, quite understandably, with the worst suspicions. So it's not actually in the interests of the report of the panel and of Sir John Chilcot's own work to allow all this speculation to run riot without explanation.
And as a seasoned and senior politician, this will make your heart sink. The day that your letter broke in the news, we had a phone-in here on LBC, and so many people, particularly young people, phoned, tweeted, texted and emailed and say, why do we bother voting? Why do we bother voting if they treat us like this? And that's pretty ugly, because I know you will, in a few weeks, and all your colleagues will be urging everyone to vote, but they look at something like this, Deputy Prime Minister, and they say, why?
Well, by the way, actually, you could flip the argument the other way around. Is if you think the way that things are done in the kind of established way, and you want it changed, for heaven's sake, get stuck in there and vote. I'm not going to repeat. We've talked about it before in this programme. My own frustrations at the sort of slightly clapped out way in which we do politics in this country. I did my bit to try and change it. People didn't choose to support the changes I pushed on party funding reform, votes to the House of Lords, changing the voting system and so on, but that'll come back up again, and in a sense, if people become more and more impatient with change and to change the way in which the sort of establishment run things, that is all, that's music to my ears as a sort of reformist liberal. But on this particular issue, I do think we're in the worst of all worlds now, which is people are dismayed and angry, that families are deeply upset, and we've been told it's not going to be published anytime soon, and yet no one really understands why.
We better move on. Peter, thank you for your call. To another caller. Where do we go, Deputy Prime Minister?
Sheila in Purley. Hello, Sheila.
Good morning, Mr. Clegg.
Morning.
Now, my question is, why are we giving all these billions and billions in foreign aid when we know it's mired in corruption, when our own country needs this money, when you think of the forces are being cut, the police, A&Es are closing, the schools, some schools are teaching language, foreign students, 25 different languages, and immigration. Now, I'm older than you, Mr. Clegg. I'm nearly 80, and I can remember disasters in this country going back 60 years. And we know that foreign aid is mired in corruption, and it has been for years, and no government has ever done anything about it. There's no checks and balances, and quite frankly, I pay taxes, and people I've spoken to over the last 2 years about this, and it used to be Afghanistan, foreign aid, and immigration.
Sheila, excuse me interrupting, but just to clarify, I want to keep you on the line. You're asking, would you stop it altogether, or you just want it radically cut, so I can put your question to the Deputy Prime Minister?
What corruption? Foreign aid?
Foreign aid, yeah.
No, I think it should be drastically
cut. Stay on the line. Yeah, Mr. Clegg.
Sheila, you're not alone.
It's about 11 point something billion, just to remind the listeners.
So we in terms of, how much do we spend on all this? We spend now 0.7% of everything, our national wealth we devote to helping countries elsewhere in the world. I think you and I are just going to have to agree to disagree when it comes to the massive humanitarian efforts that we conduct around the world. I think it should be a source of pride for us that when we see people starving, terrorised by conflict, on the edge of absolute destitution, that we lead the world in rushing to those parts of the world to try and help them. So, for instance, our humanitarian operation in Syria is the largest we've ever launched, hundreds of millions of pounds. Yes, that is British taxpayers' money, but I like to believe that most people think that our humanitarian instinct is a good one. On what I'd call not emergency humanitarian relief, but aid more generally. Yes, I think you're right, Sheila, in saying we should be very vigilant and the money just doesn't end up in corrupt pockets, and I accept that's an ongoing challenge. I actually think we've done a huge amount to make sure that the transparency of aid, that you can actually now, as a member of the public, go online and have a look online where aid is going, to whom, for what purposes. We've got people crawling over all the projects to make sure they're being well spent on the ground. They don't end up being sort of filtered away into the clammy hands of dodgy bosses and political despots and so on. But here's the point, Sheila, which I'm not sure if I succeed in persuading you, but I do think it's worth remembering that helping other countries to help their own people is not just, I think, it's not just a sort of altruistic, sort of charitable thing to do. It actually makes sense for us, because the kind of things that does affect...
The Ethiopian Spice Girls.
Well,
how the hell
this is the case you raised before. I must look into the Ethiopian skies.
Yenga, I'll write it out for you.
As it happens, I've visited some of the projects that we fund in Ethiopia for instance, make sure that to make sure that Ethiopian girls get a good education, that they look after their health, that they get a full role in society. And the reason why that is in our interest, is if their societies are more stable, if their societies are more healthy and are economically stronger, then fewer people will move vast distances to try and illegally migrate from one continent to the other, and there's less likelihood that you're going to get the conflicts that end up on our doorstep anyway. And that's why I just do think it's worth remembering. Yes, I think it's the right thing to do anyway. It's also actually in our own interest to try and create a more stable world around us.
Sheila, thank you. I sense that you will have to agree to disagree on this. We move on. Deputy Prime Minister.
So, Herbie in Harrow. Hello, Herbie.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Clegg. Good morning, Nick.
Hello.
Mr. Clegg, I understand today that the EU is going to be going back to go into quantitative easing again. And
it's going to be what?
Quantitative easing. Talking about possible quantitative easing.
Yep. Draghi, yep.
And I think that this shows the state that the EU's in. And considering, thank God, we don't belong to the Eurozone ourselves, do you think this is very good for us staying in the common market now, considering it's in the state that it's in and it's dragging us down? And do you think it's fair that we should have been fined for the EU to now charge us for living off immoral earnings, as they would say, and drug trafficking, which is what they've done by putting the saying we've been successful?
I didn't quite follow
that was the enhanced. Do you remember the enhanced payment? Because they redid our economic equation, and they said that because of money that had possibly been paid out in the in prostitution and others, we suddenly find ourselves at the back end of last year having to give more money. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, and then as you know, we successfully renegotiated that. Herbie,
negotiated it down, not away.
Just on the kind of this impending announcement, I don't know what's going to be made some point later today by the head of the European Central Bank. I mean, firstly, I think it is a good thing, and frankly, I think it's too. It could have come a lot earlier for the European Central Bank to do what our central bank, and indeed what the Federal Reserve, the US Central Bank, did a long time ago, which is basically to use their muscle to kind of pump prime the economy. Now, there's lots of technicalities involved in this. There's basically a bit of a row which has been going on for a long time between those who basically think the European Central Bank should more or less emulate, carbon copy what was being done here in Britain and in America. And there's a very strong feeling in Berlin and in Germany that is a sort of that's rewarding people who have rewarding countries who've been sloppy in their own bookkeeping and in the way in which they manage their own finances. So there's been there's still this open question about whether national banks, central banks, will have to kind of foot the bill, if you like, and we'll see where they come out on that later in the day. But I think it's a good thing that the European Central Bank is doing whatever it can to stimulate growth in the Eurozone? Yes, it does. And this comes to my other point, Herbie, is you say, well, shouldn't we, or you imply at least, shouldn't we just sort of turn our back on it, pull the drawbridge up somehow, cut ourselves off? The idea that we can cut ourselves off from our own kind of hinterland, that we should cut ourselves off from a marketplace of 500 million people. I just kind of generally think having British companies being able to sell goods and products into a marketplace which is the biggest borderless marketplace in the world of 500 million people clearly is better for us than only being able to sell into our own marketplace of 60 million people.
Let's be honest, if Britain was to be asked to join the EU today, they'd vote no. The way it is currently.
I don't know, actually. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know, because I'll tell you what.
It's a basket case.
Well, I think there's a lot of people who quite understandably, and myself included.
Greece can't wait to get out the door.
Well, we'll see.
Well, in fact, I mean, we do need your comment on that, and I'm going to mangle my pronunciation,
Right.
so I apologise. You'll know how to say all these words. But if the ultra-left-wing party Syriza and Alexis Spiras wins in Greece, what does that mean for Europe?
I think we might see, as Herbie said, more kind of turbulence and question marks around the Eurozone. Do I think it would be a good idea for Greece to leave the Eurozone? No, I don't, not at all, because I think the moment you make something which was held to be...
God, they've got to they can't keep up. Let them get out. We can all go on holiday.
There's a whole debate which we don't... there's a whole debate which we don't have a role in about the terms of the repayments made by Greece, and that's in a sense for the people in the Eurozone to sort out. But do I personally think it's good for either the Eurozone or for Britain to see what was considered to be an irreversible step, in other words, the creation of a single currency, become a reversible one? I think it would have an unravelling effect. I think that would have a knock-on effect on us, because whether Herbie likes it or not, it is by far our largest export market. It is right on our doorstep, and the reason why I say to you that if I think there was a vote now whether we should go into the European Union or not, I actually think, much though there are lots of totally understandable misgivings about how decisions are taken, whether they're making the right decisions in the Eurozone of which we're not a part, actually the fundamental truth that you can only really deliver prosperity and security and a safe environment and keep our streets safe from cross-border crime by working with other countries in the European Union remains the same truth as ever.
Switzerland and Norway survived, don't they?
Well, actually, as it happens, if you speak to the Norwegians, I'm not sure if you ever have done, they think it's a total disaster what position they're in, because they have to pay. Now listen to this. They have to pay.
Norwegian
No, they have to. Well, actually, most they have to pay into the European Union coffers.
Right.
They have to abide by the European Union rules. So they have to pay to become member of a club over which they have no say whatsoever. It's the worst of all worlds. That's why I'm absolutely dismayed that UKIP and large parts of the Tory party think being Norway, which is where you basically have to abide by the rules of Brussels, but you've got no say over them, is a sensible approach for a great nation such as ours. I want us to remain at the top table, drafting, writing, crafting those rules.
All right. I have a couple of questions for you today. You earlier referred yourself as a reformist.
I saw you scribble it down.
Yes, a reformist liberal. I just want to check some of your liberal qualifications, Deputy Prime Minister. Page 3 returned today in the Sun newspaper. Is it right to publish page 3, a topless girl?
They can publish what they like. Free society. Do I think it's in keeping with the way in which women both want to be and should be represented? No, of course it's not, because this idea that the only reason you have a big photograph of a woman in your newspaper is because of what they look like rather than what they think or what they do, I think it's totally outdated. So I'm not, but I'm a liberal who believes that the editors should take their own decision. But I happen to believe that if they do decide to move with the times, it's about time too.
Doesn't a woman have... Feminism is about choice. Doesn't a woman have a choice?
But it's my choice to have my opinion. My opinion is that to have the most prominent depiction of women in one of the most prominent newspapers in this country only dwell on what a woman physically looks like rather than what they think, what they do, what they achieve, what they believe, I think is demeaning to a lot of women. But I would defend the freedom of the editor of The Sun as I defend the freedom of editors throughout the press to do what they like, even if I don't agree with it. That is what being in a liberal society is all about.
And my second and final question about your liberal background, liberal strengths.
Are you now the arbiter?
I know,
of
even I
what
thought that was
liberal?
extraordinary. Just those words coming out of my mouth seemed strange.
The barrel
that was weird, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Would you sell cigarettes in plain packaging?
Yeah, I would. I think given the evidence is that it does help stop kids
behind screens.
Yeah, look,
It's not a crime to smoke.
no, it's not. It's not a crime. It's not a crime.
As
Otherwise,
possibly you know.
As I possibly,
Careful of the children listening. We better be careful.
No, but look,
No, it's not half term. We're all right.
It's not a crime, but it's very bad for you. And we should be taking sensible steps to discourage particularly kids from taking up smoking. And there is evidence. And I think it's been borne out by the latest facts in Australia that it does help stop, it does help kind of minimise the marketing appeal to kids, and that has to be good. Who's going to object to the idea that we should minimise the amount of,
It's just behind screens. It's not a crime to ask for a packet of 20 cigarettes.
No, it's
or
not
even
a,
10.
It's not a crime, but I think we're in this slight sort of grey area, aren't we? Where it's become increasingly socially sort of frowned upon, but it is not illegal. And I think actually this step.
How old were you when you had your first cigarette, Mr. Clegg?
Nick, I can't possibly remember.
Was that long ago?
I've just turned 48. Yes, it was rather a long time ago, I have to admit. Oh, stop it. Can we move on to another subject?
All right, how many smoking at the day at the moment?
Very few.
Well, what is very few?
I'm not. There are more important things to talk about.
Well, I worry about your health. Where are we going next?
Your concern is
constantly.
Some
nights I can't sleep.
It is tears are welling in my eyes at the moment.
Where do we go?
Gaynor in Pontypool.
Good morning.
Hello, Gaynor.
Yes, I'd like to know what you intend doing about the appalling case standards that currently exist in British prisons that lead into the increasing numbers of suicides.
Well, I think
there were figures out today that you might have heard about. Unfortunately, I think we're at almost a record high of the number of successful suicides in British prisons.
And I'm very worried about this. I think the way in which we deal with substance abuse, drugs, alcohol, the way we deal with mental health generally, but especially in our prison system, still needs to be dramatically improved. As it happens, I was talking to Chris Grayling, who is responsible for this area in government, just yesterday. I lead a sort of task force of ministers to try and make improvements on this. We are introducing a big step change in what is called the kind of rehabilitation revolution in the next 2 or 3 months, Gaynor, where charitable groups, those who've got particular expertise in helping offenders will be paid to make sure that offenders in prison have a greater sense of kind of confidence and, dare I say, even optimism about what they can do on the straight and narrow as law-abiding citizens when they leave prison. And I think that will make a dramatic difference in cutting reoffending, because, as you know, Gaynor, one of the reasons we have so many people in prison over and over and over and over again is we haven't managed as a society to stop this revolving door of crime. I think it will help deal with some of the sense of despair and mental health problems which are clearly leading to people taking their own lives. You may have seen, Gaynor, that I have recently also made announcements about how I think across the country we should be moving towards what they've managed to do in Detroit in the United States some time ago, which is patients in the care of mental health trusts basically having none of those take their own lives, a zero suicide policy. I was in Liverpool, in Merseyside last week. Incredibly impressive work by the Mental Health Trust there, where they have totally transformed the way in which they treat, identify, and help those who might be at risk of taking their own lives. And I think what you'll see as we roll out this approach over the next few years is a steady and, I hope, sharp decline in the number of people taking their own lives who are patients in mental health trusts.
Thank you for that call. Now, some of you may recall, during Call Clegg a couple of weeks ago, we took a call from Michelle in Islington regarding her 8-year-old son who'd been expelled from school, later diagnosed with ADHD and sent to a pupil referral unit. However, as a working parent, she was having trouble with the hours they were offering. Here's a little of what she told the Deputy Prime Minister.
The timetable for this pupil referral unit is 9:15 to 2:45, and on a Thursday it's 9:15 to 12:15. So how, as full-time working parents, are we supposed to get to the school, the pupil referral unit, at 2:45?
Well, just to show that we at LBC and with the help of the Deputy Prime Minister's office, we have now taken this up. A lot of you emailed and asked, and Islington Borough Council spokesman has come back. They have now moved the hours. They are working with the pupil referral unit. We have put that together. So hopefully the best of luck, Michelle, with your young chap, and we hope it all works out.
That's very good news.
Nick Clegg, where do we go now, sir?
Graham in Erith in Kent. Graham?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Just two.
Oh, hello, Graham. Are you still? Oh, it can't be an old. Graham. No, we better stop. It can't be one of those old phone boxes where you put the 2p in.
I think the 2p's run out.
I've got a note of his question here. He was going to say, when are you going to pay the £800,000 for policing your conference in Scotland?
Right, that's a kind of left field question.
It is. Liberal Democrats have been criticised after it emerged the party refused to meet the £800,000 policing cost of its UK party conference in Glasgow in 2013. Police Scotland have informed the office of Nick Clegg that it will only provide a basic service for last year's gathering in the same city. Is that all dealt with now?
Right. I think I think the way in which the police, very professionally, and I'm want to pay tribute to them, help not only with our conferences but all sorts of conferences. Is I mean, it's not. I'm not aware of any great sort of outstanding issue there. But
all right, we lost the call anyway. I think we're staying in Scotland. Where are we going next?
Ben in Edinburgh. Hello, Ben.
Hello.
Hi, Ben.
I'd like to ask: should we lower the voting age? Because
yes.
I'm 17 and I voted in the Scottish referendum last September, but I won't be able to vote in the UK general election, and it's very annoying.
Yeah.
Can I ask, this is Nick Ferrari, which way might you vote, Ben? You don't have to answer, of course.
A Liberal Democrat, of course.
Let's see what Nick Clegg makes of your suggestion.
Oh, Ben, now why don't you stay on the air for a good while? How nice to hear from you. No, Ben, I basically agree with you. Of course,
we don't want to intrude. This is quite a rare event. Nick Clegg's found a voter. I'll step out the room.
Won't let go of you now, Ben. No, Ben. I basically entirely agree with you. I've long been of the view that we should be lowering the voting age, and I think for those who believe that we shouldn't, and as you know, we haven't been able to make progress on this in the coalition government because David Cameron and the Conservatives don't want to give 16 and 17-year-olds the vote. I think for those who, still sort of digging their heels in and sort of defending the old way of doing things, just look at your experience and many people like you who were fully engaged in animated the referendum debate. It's your country, it's your future. It's quite right that you should have a say about the future of your country. It shouldn't just be allowed, just left to others to decide it for you. Now, as you know, what we've decided to do is to give to the government of Scotland the freedom to decide to lower the voting age for elections in Scotland. So you will at least, I think, assuming that is then a decision which will be, or a freedom that will, or a new power that will be acted upon by the Scottish government, you will have that right north of the border. But look, the Labour Party now agrees with lowering the voting age. We've long believed in it. I think the Conservative Party is out of step with modern times. I think it will happen, Ben, so keep making the case.
All right, let's just go to some emails briefly before we go to the last couple of calls. Dan in Dartford, how are we meant to have any confidence in the Lib Dem party when one of their own, Matthew Oakeshott, has given £300,000 to ensure Labour candidates get in the next general election? What would Nick Clegg say to him?
Well, as it happens, he's not a Liberal Democrat. He's a very wealthy man, and he's in a sense free to. I think
he was a Lib Dem, wasn't he?
He was. But he's left. He's left the party. So he's a wealthy. He made a lot of money in property, and he's giving. I don't know what it is.
£300,000
to Labour, £300,000 to Liberal Democrat. I think he's even giving some money to the Green MP.
Yes,
in Brighton. So
£10,000 to the Greens.
I mean, he's not a member of my party, so he's free to decide what to do with his considerable wealth.
Yeah, doesn't help you there, does it?
Well, it helps those Lib Dem MPs he's helping.
But not the Labour one.
Well, look, it's a free country. He's not a member of the party, and he's a very wealthy man, and he can do what he likes with his cash.
We go to other calls.
Ray in Broadstairs.
Morning, Mr. Clegg.
Morning.
Given your assertion that the suggestion of, courtesy of the national polls, that the Lib Dems will lose half of their seats is silly in public school speak, would you be prepared to put your money where your mouth is, in the sense that I'm prepared to make a wager on a 10-to-1 basis? We will give the proceeds to a family in Sierra Leone that I've supported through the Ebola crisis. I'm prepared to pay £200 to them if you get 25 seats or more. You're so convinced that you aren't going to lose your seats. I'm asking you to be prepared publicly to donate £2,000, that's the 10-to-1 basis, to that village in Sierra Leone, in the event of you actually retaining the seats that you are so confident of getting? Are you so confident and so brave, and you're certainly rich enough, I know, to be able to afford that? Are you prepared to do that publicly?
So, Ray, I think if I start, placing money bets with you, then there'll be no end of people who will be asking me to do the same thing. So if you don't mind, Ray... But by the way, I think it's great that you give that money to that family in Sierra Leone, and I hope you'll continue to do so. But, Ray, look, I'll tell you the reason why, and I'm sorry if you felt the word silly was wrong, okay, wrong. Why I think some of these predictions are wrong is what they do is they take these snapshot polls, which vary, of course, massively. I mean, the way in which they're arrived at, the calculations, are, as you know, are sort of very variable. But what they do is they take a snapshot of the whole country. And, of course, there are large parts of the country. I mean, I've never denied this. There are large parts of the country where we're not kind of on the ground, we're not knocking on people's doorsteps, we're not present in people's lives, where we have been knocked back because of the difficult decisions we've had to take, and because some people don't like the fact that we stepped up to the plate in the first place. But in those areas, and this is why I am confident we can do so much better than this endless sort of cottage industry of punditry suggests, and not least, by the way, because I spend so much more time in those seats than any of those pundits, is because where we get out and we explain to people that, look, we've got this big choice as a country to finish the job of securing an economic recovery, but doing it fairly, and we're the party that's saying we're going to cut less than the Conservatives, but borrow less than Labour, because we don't believe you need to swing left or right like those parties are doing. We've got to stay the course and deal with our debts and our deficit, but then fund public services properly. When we set out that and set out all the great things we've done on taxes and pensions and apprenticeships, we actually retain a lot of support. And of course, that's not picked up on a kind of great big sort of national snapshot poll. So look, that's why I'm confident. But I'm not a psephologist. I'm not a soothsayer. I'm not a number cruncher. I'm a leader of a campaigning political party, and I'm itching to get out on the campaign trail, because my experience is that where we get our message across, actually people are prepared to continue to give us their support.
All right, Florence in Orpington says, I've read in The Guardian, I've warned you about reading The Guardian, I've read in The Guardian this morning that secret talks have gone on about the leaders' debates. What can Nick Clegg tell us? Are they going to happen?
Well, if they're so secret, Florence, I'm not aware... What, with the political parties?
Yes.
I'm not aware of any great secret talks. So we're still not with me. So I'm getting really paranoid now. So Florence, who has been having these secret talks without me?
But you're ready to go, whatever the equation might be.
Well, no. Actually, as it happens, I wasn't very happy with the original proposal, or the proposal that the broadcasters put forward, because I'm the leader of a governing party, and I want to be held to account beyond everything else for what we've done in government for the last 5 years. I think I have an old-fashioned view that if you run government or help run government, you should be held to account. I don't understand why David Cameron doesn't believe in that simple principle. And actually, I would have been excluded from one of the debates. So the broadcasters have got a difficult job, but they absolutely shouldn't be bamboozled or intimidated by this almost comic game playing from the Conservatives who've developed this really truly touching concern about the plight of the Green Party.
It's in his heart, you can tell. Talking of the Prime Minister, he was asked by a radio station yesterday if he had to take a group of world leaders to a meal, would he go to Gordon Ramsay, Nando's, or a Harvester? You're probably aware what he... I want to change it slightly. He opted for Nando's.
Oh, I would have done.
Well, I want to change it.
There might be differences.
If you took your fellow world leaders, would it be Nando's, a Gordon Ramsay, a Harvester, or a tapas bar?
Well. Can I speak up for the Swedish meatball wrap that Pret do? Because I eat.
Well, let's come out of left field, but you can. Yes.
Because this would be for lunch, would it?
Yeah.
This would be for lunch.
Yeah,
well, that is quite a staple diet for me, and I like it.
Oh, what is it? A Swedish meatball?
It's a meatball wrap. It's try it.
Okay. And how much does that cost?
Ooh, dearie me. I can't remember. Better go. Oh, dearie me! I've been stumped on the price. Better go rush out and find out.
Do you have staff who buy it for you?
No. Right, but I also buy some soup, and sometimes. Do you really must know? I will disaggregate.
How do you like your eggs in the morning? Just before you go, can you solve the biggest political riddle of our time? At that cabinet meeting, I'm going to play you some tracks. Which one was it? Was it this by Beyonce?
You must not know about me. You must not know about me.
Or was it this by Beyonce?
No, it wasn't that. I would have recognised that.
Or was it this by Beyonce?
I reckon it was the first.
Well,
this is Michael Goes.
This is Michael Goes, yeah, and we're trying to get to the bottom.
One of the more unexpected.
Let's play Go Back to number one again, if we could, Clive. Is this what you heard when Michael Goes and he got a public grilling? Shellacking?
I can't. I think it was this one, but I can't quite remember. I was so nonplussed by all that. I didn't know where it was going. Look, I have a BlackBerry, which my ringtone is famously called factory setting ringtone. I don't even know how to change mine so I was gobsmacked that Michael Gove should even know.
You didn't think that was a kind of music, did you? Factory setting, a bit like garage.
Yeah, exactly. I thought, what's this cool track? This cool track called factory setting.
Great having there we are, getting to the bottom of all the big political stories here on Call Clegg with Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg. Mr. Clegg, thank you. On LBC.
The Deputy Prime Minister has told LBC he supports the introduction of plain cigarette packaging in England. The government's announced a vote on the measure will be held before the general election. Nick Clegg says it's the right thing to do.
It's not a crime, but it's very bad for you. And we should be taking sensible steps, to discourage particularly kids from taking up smoking. And there is evidence, and I think it's been borne out by the latest facts in Australia, that